Welcome back. My name is Key. I am the Chiron Guide and I help people heal through astrology. All right, so I am following up from my YouTube video about my silent retreat that I had in November of 2024. And it took me a while to get back, y'all, but I think I am ready to talk about it. So, if you are thinking about a silent retreat, I encourage you to maybe grab a pen and paper and take a couple of notes. I'm going to be answering some of your questions that you've asked. And if you haven't seen the last video, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's about 9 minutes long and it's about why I went on a silent retreat and pretty much what I was expecting. So go ahead and watch that video. So if you have watched the last video about the reason I was taking a silent retreat, I'll fill you in on a couple of details on how everything went. And I took a couple notes so I can stay on track. And so this video is not too long. So if you remember from the last video, I was planning on going on a silent retreat. I have never been on a silent retreat before, and it was Vipassana style. Pretty much, I was signing up not to speak for 3 whole days. I was cut off from the world, no social media, didn't speak to my husband, no family members, no reading, no writing, no intake of media. So I did that for about 3 days. And pretty much I went on this silent retreat just to reset. The time that I went on the silent retreat was very intentional. It was around early November and it was so needed. So now I'll reveal the place that I went on the silent retreat to. I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure what my experience would be, and I didn't want to recommend a place that I wasn't familiar with. So the place that I went to is called Dharma Treasure in Cochise, Arizona. It's a Buddhist temple, and you don't have to be Buddhist to do a Vipassana silent retreat. They welcome people from all different types of backgrounds, which is one of the reasons I chose to go to this place. I have a holistic belief system and I don't follow any particular religion. So knowing that they welcome people from different backgrounds was very important to me. So it was about a 2 hour drive from where I live. The drive was beautiful. It was really out in the boonies, y'all. So when I got there, I checked in with some really nice people. They kind of showed me the ropes of the place. There is a main house where you can go for like any food. You can also go to the main house for morning meditation. And there is also a house to cook at. It's called the Cook Shack. And so when I got there, if you remember in my last video, I said that I would be staying in a tiny house. I was paying $100 a night to stay in this tiny house with a compost toilet because there was no way I was going to go pee in the woods. So that's why I got the tiny house originally. But to my surprise, when I got there, they said that I was upgraded to a super cute casita because they were doing construction next to the tiny house that I was going to stay in. And they didn't think it was fair or would be peaceful for me to stay in a tiny house if construction is going on next door to me. I thought that that was beautiful, and I'm incredibly thankful for them thinking of that because, after all, I am there to meditate. So I pretty much had to sign papers to say that this is what I really wanted to do. They gave me a pin for my shirt that said I would be in silence. So that way, if someone on the property spoke to me, they wouldn't think I was a jerk for not saying good morning back or good afternoon back. So I wore a pin that said I was in silence so everyone would know to honor my silence. I had the option to have a meditation teacher, and I chose to have that option. And pretty much he was there to make sure that I was psychologically okay and to make sure that this is something that I really wanted to do. So I got all my talking out of the way before I went into silence. He just asked me questions about what I was hoping to get out of it and just kind of gauging if I would want to run off in the mountains and become a nun. And I said, pretty much, don't tempt me with a good time because the way the world is set up right now, I just might. I just might. No, he mentally checked in on me, which was great. And so I went into silence for 3 days. The property was beautiful. It was so much fun to see deer running around. It's a no hunting zone, so they know they're safe. They have a farm there, so chickens were everywhere. And it was just very peaceful, and the views were absolutely gorgeous. My days were spent meditating in my casita. The meditation teacher warned me that I may feel the need to nap, and that definitely did happen. And that just means that I needed the rest. I mean, we're so used to what I'm so used to doing and not being. So it was really nice to just take that time to just rest and be cut off from the world. Like I said, no phone, no technology, no reading, no pen, no paper, no nothing. And I said in the other video that I was going to write because I am a writer, but the meditation teacher recommended that I don't write. I mean, I could do whatever I wanted on this retreat, I'll just be honest. But I took the recommendations from the teacher because I wanted the full experience. So he recommended that I didn't write because he said essentially you are emptying out your brain whenever you do write. And that's not what we want. We want to see where my attention keeps going to. And so that was amazing. I'm so glad that I didn't write. And I noticed on the retreat what my mind kept going to because I didn't write was how I wanted to live my life. That's what I kept thinking about. Things I want to do in the future, things that I don't want to do anymore, and changes that I need to make in my life. So my mind kept going to work. So that was really interesting to see. Other things that came up were ideas about how I wanted to run my business, things that I didn't want to do anymore, ideas for future projects, and just overall realizations. There was a lot of self realization going on. So I'm glad that I didn't write anything down. Honestly, there were times where it felt like time was going so slow. I remember one day I meditated and it felt like I was in deep meditation. You know, I was in my meditation bag, y'all. And I looked at my watch and I'm like, 5 minutes have passed by. Oh my God, I have a couple of more days. Will I survive? So I'm not going to lie to you. There were times where I felt like time was going absolutely slow. And when it did, I, went for a walk, cleaned up my casita just a little bit. They had a clawfoot tub in there. So I took baths. I absolutely love water. I believe that water is a portal. So that was amazing. The view from my bathroom had a view of the mountains. So that was lovely. Typically, they will give you chores. So they will ask you what chores you want to do while you're on your silent retreat before you go there. And so I said, I would do like organizing chores, sweeping, and stuff like that. You can do gardening, all of that. But since I came on a weekend, I didn't have to do any chores. And essentially, at first, I'm like, great, I don't have to do any chores, but chores really make the time go by. So I had to get really creative with my time. So some mornings began in early meditation. I would meditate with others in the temple as early as 6 a.m. So that was a beautiful way to start my day. I went between meditating in my casita and between meditating in this beautiful yurt that was absolutely gorgeous. And I'll show you a picture right here of the yurt. I absolutely love this yurt. I'll absolutely miss it. It was very calming, it was very peaceful, and I loved meditating in this yurt. And meditating in this yurt also helped me to bring myself into presence because next door to the yurt is where they were doing construction. So it really taught me how to tune out the distractions and bring my attention inward. So I actually did that on purpose. And yeah, it was a fun practice. So while I want to keep some things sacred and I'm not going to tell you everything and all of my thoughts from the silent retreat, I will say I did cry during my silent retreat and I'm glad that I did. It wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of relief because, as humans, most of us are always on. Like I said in my last video, the news that we see in a day, and again, the news I'm talking about, our ancestors got that news in a lifetime. So just to be cut off and just be with myself, that felt incredibly refreshing. So after I wrapped up my silent retreat, I plan to meet with my meditation teacher. So that way he can help me to break silence before I left. I did not want to break silence, but he said, I think it's best for you to break silence before you go out into the real world. He knows best. He's done this a million times and has supported a million people. He just asked me how everything was for me, any realizations that I've had and what my mind kept going to. And I mentioned how my mind kept going to how I wanted to live my life, things that I wanted to do, things I didn't want to do anymore, and pretty much just my goals and how I just want to focus on being a good person. Just realizations on what I wanted to do and did not want to do anymore. And sometimes self realization really sucks, but it's also liberating. He said that he's not worried about me running off into the mountains to become a nun, and he can't wait to see my future. So we're keeping in touch. He's an amazing meditation teacher. I will link the information below to the meditation teacher. His name is Upali, and I will also link Dharma Treasure Temple. I do want to say that there were other people there on their own retreats. So there were other people on silent retreats, and there were other people on like group retreats that were talking. So everyone's kind of in their own little world on this property. I do want to answer a couple of questions that I got on Instagram that folks asked me about my silent retreat. So someone asked me, did I have any aha moments? Aha moments that came up for me is just how I wanted to live my life, things I wanted to do, things I didn't want to do anymore, just evaluating the areas of my life where there was resistance. Surprises about the retreat is another question. Did anything surprise me? I would say I began to get really comfortable after the first day. And I love being in silence. I was a kid that grew up playing the quiet game, so I was good. But I did miss my husband. I did miss my mother. So, I mean, those didn't surprise me, but I was so surprised at how quickly I was able to get into the tune of being silent. And I'm a Cancer, so me crying wasn't a surprise. So it was really good to release that. But again, it wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of release. I was also asked how much time for a silent retreat would I recommend? And I got this question a lot, even from friends and family. So the reason why I did a weekend retreat, pretty much like I believe it was like a Thursday through Monday, I can't remember, but it was short, about 3 days. And I personally started with, well, let me back up. So I've known I wanted to go on a silent retreat for a few years now. And so what I would do is I would practice at home, being silent. So I would disconnect from the world while I was at home for a couple of hours to kind of test that out. And that's what I recommend to people who are not sure if they want to do this or not. If you can start at home, start at home. If your kids are going to be gone, or if your partner is going to be gone, or whatever, I would practice a silent retreat at home first to see how you feel, what comes up for you, maybe kind of document some areas that may feel uncomfortable for you, and just notice what you notice by trying a silent retreat at home first. So that's what I did. When my husband would go away, I would practice being silent and not speak to anyone for an entire day. Now, the typical length for a silent retreat is 10 days of Vipassana style retreat. I chose 3 days to kind of dip my toe to see if this is something that I could really handle. And I'm glad that I chose that period of time because it's a short stint and I can leave after 3 days and kind of like feel out, okay, can I do 10 days? And even the meditation teacher said it's great that you didn't just dive into 10 days because some people deal with psychological issues and they have to leave the 10-day retreat early. So, yes, I do know myself, but I've never done anything like this before. So, that's why I started with 3 days. So, I say all that to say start at home first and then start with maybe even a day silent retreat. They do have 24-hour silent retreats out there. So, start small and then graduate up to the 10 days. I will link a resource in the caption that allows you to have a free 10-day silent retreat. And it's something that you have to apply for, and there's always a wait list. They have 24-hour retreats and they also have day retreats. Some things I would keep in mind before you choose to go on a silent retreat is I would talk to your partner and close family members just to let them know where you're going to be at and what you expect. That's something that I did for my family members. I just told my parents and my partner and my close friends. And I also showed them where I would be in case there were any issues. My partner and I also had guidelines for when I came back, just so I can reintegrate back to being at home. For example, our agreements were he needs to leave the house with the dog for at least 2 hours so that I can take a shower, unpack, and kind of like quietly integrate into being back at home. Another agreement was I didn't want to hear anything about the news or current events because I am like hypersensitive and hyper aware since I have been in silence for a few days. And another agreement was, please don't ask me anything about my silent retreat until I'm ready to talk. So this really helped me to integrate back into the real world. And I got to give credit to my partner because he asked me, are there any guidelines I should follow when you get back? Because I didn't even think of that. So that really helped me to become more comfortable. The hardest part about coming back was meetings and work. That was the hardest part because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I really don't care about any of this stuff right now. I just want to go back into silence and be introspective. So, coming back from the silent retreat and integrating back into the real world is really the hardest part. My meditation teacher also prepared me for going back into the real world. He said that, when you leave this place, because, I didn't want to turn back on my phone, but I had to because I'm like, I don't know how to get home. So I had the overwhelming feeling of, the text messages and all that other stuff. But he said, it's like this curve that you're going to be on. You get off your silent retreat, you maintain that silence. And he recommended that I meditated for at least like an hour a day to kind of hold that silence and that peace. Then he said, you're really going to start appreciating people overall. And then once you get back into the real world and you get back into the swing of things, you're going to wonder, did I even go on a silent retreat? That's where I'm at right now, y'all. I need another one. And if I could do this every year, towards the end of the year, I definitely would. Someone else asked me about what they should pack for their silent retreat. So, depending on the retreat grounds that you're going to stay at, I'll give you examples of things that I packed. I mean, pretty much like I'm going on vacation. And women overpack. So I overpacked, but I brought my own food because I expected to cook my own food. I brought vitamins, supplements. If you need any medications, I recommend bringing that. Pajamas, just pack like you're going on vacation. Just don't pack any entertainment like books, iPads, and stuff like that. One thing that I did bring with me that was incredibly important was my meditation shawl that you see here. And so I am a certified meditation teacher, specifically tantric meditation. And one thing I did learn is having a meditation shawl will help to prepare your mind to meditate. So every time I put on this shawl, my body knows that it's time to meditate no matter where I am. So that really helped me to fall into meditation in a place that I wasn't familiar with. So when it was time to meditate, I put on this shawl and my body knew, okay, Key, it's time to meditate. So I highly recommend that if you are new to meditation, even if you're not new to meditation, to have something that reminds you of your meditation practice, even mala beads if that's in your practice. But I absolutely love this meditation shawl. And it doesn't have to be fancy, it could be a scarf, a piece of cloth, or anything that makes you feel comfortable. Pieces of advice that I received before going on my silent retreat was to update my voicemail because right now it's on like the default voicemail. So I updated it with my voice to say that I would be on a silent retreat between these days and you will not hear from me from this date to this date. And I also built in some buffer time. So I didn't go back out into the real world until 2 days after my silent retreat to get acclimated again. And make sure you update your out of office on your email as well. And I did that on my personal email also. I also want to add that on my way home from my silent retreat, I drove home in silence for 2 hours and it was beautiful. And I also wrote for about 2 hours. I filled up 30 pages of a notebook. And I will say it was easy to remember everything that I wanted to say while I was writing because my retreat wasn't that long. Now, if I were to do a 10-day retreat, I don't know if I remember everything, but it was so therapeutic to do that brain dump once I got home so that I could, share my experience with friends and family. I feel like I have the introduction to a book. So we'll see. Maybe you'll get to read it one day. I think I'm ready to do a 10-day silent retreat, y'all. I was talking to my meditation teacher before I left, and he said, you did a short silent retreat, which is great. But around day 3 is when a purification begins to happen. And I could feel that purification beginning to happen, and I wanted more of that. So I think I'm definitely going to try out 10 days. But day 3 is when a lot of self realizations happen, purifications happen. So I left right on the cusp, but I'm really glad that I did 3 days instead of just jumping into 10 days. Also, before you book your silent retreat, I would just maybe journal about why you want to take a silent retreat and what you hope to get out of it. Because I feel like some people just do things because it's the trendy thing to do. But I would really get clear on why it is that you're doing this to kind of set the tone for your time for your silent retreat. Also, before you go, make sure you ask all of your questions and get them out of the way to make sure that you're comfortable while you are there. Although I was in silence, I was given permission to break silence if I needed something, like if my heat wasn't working because it was a little chilly when I went, or if I needed something from the grocery store, but thankfully I was prepared. All right, y'all, I think that's it. I highly recommend a silent retreat. I definitely noticed a shift and a difference, and so did my family and friends. I would definitely make this a part of my self care and clarity routine towards the end of every year. I will link some resources below. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments.